kind of grabbing me at a time when things are being rebranded in a powerful way because, and you were a part of that rebranding, because, my publicist said, what is it that you do? I said, I don't know. She says, well, how do you get business? I said, well, by referral. She says, well, but this is not helpful. So I understand you help people, but how do they refer you? And it had me post on my social media, hey guys, when you send people to me, because I have not looked for a client in over 17 years. I have not looked for a client in over 17 years. So I said, so when you tell people who I am, what do you tell people? And it was really interesting. I got over 100 responses, and in over 80 of those responses, and it does make me choke up because I think the clarity comes for us not as we see ourselves, but as we see ourselves, others see us. So what came back in over 80% of those responses was, I didn't think this was possible, and now it's in my life. I didn't think it was possible to heal from cancer. I was in less than 2% survival. And now I'm 6 years in remission. I didn't think it was possible to save this marriage, or I didn't think it was possible, if I'm an abused person, to get out of this marriage. And I'm now here, and I'm happy, and I'm thriving, and I'm with my soulmate. Or I didn't think it was possible for me to get out of $250,000 debt. And here I am 3 years later running a multi-million-dollar business. And so the topics were different, but the theme was the same, and that was the possibility. And so what came to me instantaneously was, I know what I do. I'm a possibility coach. And so I am possibility coach. And like in a nutshell, so I have a company that's named You to Shine. I've had that particular company now for as organized as that for about a decade, but working with business and life coach even before then. So as a possibility coach, my one job is to free your divine potential, introduce you to you, make you comfortable with that great you within you, and just free it to overcome any obstacle that's in the way and make every dream possible. I do that either individually or in groups or in large audience. So the medium is different. The different techniques, whether it's behavioral consulting, whether it's DISC, which is a personality consulting, or whether it's energy modalities like Theta healing or EFT, emotional freedom techniques, those are just all multiple hows. But the why and the what is just making what you think impossible possible. And, my favorite thing about that is that even in the word impossible, the code is I'm possible. So just remembering that. So that's in a nutshell what I do. And I do that through sessions, trainings, and products.
I've been lucky to get different style of help from you personally. When it comes to relationship, I've come to you for relationship coaching. I've seen how that works. I remember my very first session. I probably mentioned this to you. Very first session was at a point of my life when I was in a low point. Business was for no reason whatsoever. It just wasn't working. A couple of years ago, the way it was going, I was doing very similar things, but for some reason, it was just not working. And I remember, it sounds very miraculous, right? when you talk about this thing, but I know how it impacted, how the change that I've seen, the shift in my personal life. I'm sure that has some things to do with my try effort as well. But the distinction was very clear to me. After talking to you about financial and business stuff, remember the conversation. And one of the things you said is that you were like, I'm not trying to give you an exact route of which way you need to go business wise, but you took me through the steps of healing, changing my thought process and changing my belief, basically. And I remember that some of those, you don't always see it immediately, but over the next year, things started coming to me so easily. I cannot explain how the next projects that I've gotten, I did not try, just like how you say that people are coming to you without really marketing yourself. For me, those opportunities were coming out of nowhere. Someone called and said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody with this skill set, the exact skill sets that I had." And then from that, another person reaches out, like, "We have these large projects coming." So it was just a very kind of like God sort of staged it for me. But I know that those things started to happen after the sessions with you. So do you mind explaining a little bit on how do you work with the changing the belief system? And then I also want to hear about your book, obviously, because that's also about possibilities, right?
So yeah, it's such a great question. And I probably have to start a little bit as to where my journey started with that whole belief system. And I call it BS, right? It's an
Yeah.
acronym. It's a good one, old BS. Old BS ain't serving us anymore is what I like to say. So, but I homeschooled my kids, and I just thought it was a great idea to teach them about Greece by taking them to Greece. They were young. Well, my son was not quite 5. My daughter was just over 8. And I thought, it would be so amazing to take them to the Great Labyrinth and take them through it on Crete, as opposed to look at the books, because I'm an experiential learner and I love doing that. And so I took him to Greece. I came home, and we had an amazing 3 weeks, just amazing 3 weeks, the trip of a lifetime, one of the many that followed. But when I came home, my amazing husband set me down and he said, "I'm from Ukraine originally, part of the former Soviet Union." He said, "I don't know how it works in the former USSR, but here in America, the little plastic thing that you kept swiping, it's not really attached to the actual money. So all these zeros of your great educational trip with kids, yeah, it's going to take us a while to dig out from that debt." And I was like, "Oh, okay." A little thing like money, who knew? And so I said, "Okay, it's okay. I'll just make money." And he goes, "What do you mean you'll just make money?" I said, "I'll just make money." So I went online and I Googled what is the fastest way to make money in US.
Interesting.
And what popped up was real estate. That's great. I'm going to become a realtor. So this is 2007 when houses are flying off the market, and things are happening for people. So I go to study for real estate license, and by 2008 I get my real estate license, and the market starts crashing, right? So I put my first listing on the market, and I used to teach statistics, so I know my numbers, and my numbers are making no sense because the market is crashing in front of my eyes. And so becoming a realtor at a crashing market was probably the greatest gift the universe had in store for me, because I had to learn adaptability, immediate adaptability. So I went ahead and I got, GRI, which is great, the Graduate Realtor Institute, to get more information. Got a coach right away. Got a coach. 1 month into business, I very quickly calculated, wait a minute, professional teams have coaches. Amateurs don't. If you want to make money, you need to have a coach. So I hope you guys are listening. If you're not making money, get a coach. Just get a coach. There are a lot of great coaches. So if you want to make money, you need to have accountability. You need to have a coach. So I got an amazing coach through Buffini and Company. To make a very long story short, as the market was crashing, as I was homeschooling my kids and never working on Sunday, within a year, I became in a top 1% of realtors in US. And so as that benchmark happened, people started asking me to come and talk about what was it that I was doing that was working, that they were trying to mimic, and it was not working for them. And so I started doing some business trainings and life trainings. And I very quickly realized that there was, John Maxwell says, a lid. There was a lid to practical training. And so to break through that lid, you had to open a possibility of a new mindset. You have to step out of the identity you or society has created for you. You have to create a new identity and literally shift into that new identity of higher performance. So at that point, I started looking for the reason of what is it that's blocking us, because I've had these amazing colleagues that were driven, that seemed to be performing the tasks and not arriving at the results. And that took me on a journey of understanding the conscious and subconscious mind. And the two books that have introduced it to me and that hopefully are of value to your listeners are the Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton and Divine Matrix by Greg Braden.
Oh, that's a great book, yeah.
So between those two books, I have kind of figured out the relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind. Went ahead and got a PhD on that to understand the dynamic between quantum mechanics of how the universe works. How does this space around us, how does it work? And how does it work either for us or against us? That was just my search. My seeking was I want to figure out how the universe works. Or as Einstein said, I only want to understand God's thoughts. That was
simple.
Simple. I just wanted to understand God's thoughts. And so that guided me to a lot of other different techniques. And in a nutshell, what I've come to understand and teach is that on a biological level, our thoughts are electric. Every time I have a thought, I have an electric synapse in my brain. It just bings every time. The more I think the same thought, the wider the pathways of that thought. So if you're going into the forest, as an example, and you're the first person going through the forest, it's impossible to make it through, right? It's very, very hard, not impossible, very, very hard if you're very determined. But if 2 people go, it's a little easier. With 100 people, there is a little bit of a path. But if 10,000 people have gone through, you have a highway. And so the same is with your brain. When you have a thought once, I'm a loser, it's not a big deal. If you've had a thought, I'm a loser, 1,000,000 times, it's a pretty steady highway. And you can be on the outside doing practical steps. But if they're sabotaged by that belief, what happens then is that electrical highway, we know that in physics, electrical current creates a magnetic field. So that electrical highway of your thoughts creates a magnetic field of your feelings. And so that electromagnetic field is what defines us as thinking, feeling beings or electromagnetic beings. And any electromagnetic field causes action and attracts like back to itself. So to make that big, how do we create things? There's a lot of talk of law of attraction. In terms of the simple quantum mechanics, is that your combination of thoughts and feelings creates a field that prompts you towards actions that bring results to you. And so then what becomes the most important thing is to identify the underlying thought, if you're working with theta healing or hypnosis, or feeling, if you're working with emotional freedom technique. Either thought or feeling that creates person's reality at a current time. Once you identify that pattern, then you can shift it and introduce literally a new charge to person's life. And the shift is so powerful that it would take many years of habitual training. Once again, there is no wrong way to grow. There are just easier ways to grow and faster ways to grow and slow ways to grow. So when you understand how to identify the blocking pattern and to remove it, you simply free a person to create the life that they want. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. So basically what you're saying is that a couple of things, right? Whatever you're thinking, you're becoming, basically, in a way, right? Your thoughts gives you feelings, and your feelings creates the energy around you. And whatever energy is around you, that's what's attracting. So if I'm constantly thinking, oh, I always end up with loser people, that's exactly what you end up with. If I'm constantly thinking, oh, I always lose my job, or I never do anything right, I end up believing. But then you're saying that you could reprogram your thoughts, you reprogram yourself. How do you reprogram? There are a lot of videos you see that at nighttime you could listen to. That's how I started. At nighttime, you're listening to different frequency or different video, or you can meditate. But you're also saying that there are other ways, easier and faster ways to get to from point A to point B. And
Absolutely.
one of your teaching is that.
And it's absolutely. And one point that I go back to all the time is that as people, we think we know what we think.
Mm.
But over 1 million thoughts goes through our mind. And I
Mhm.
find that very often being negative, we think we're very positive because we're not monitoring every thought.
Yes.
And so the rule of thumb that I suggest is that the very first step of awareness is notice what you notice,
Mm.
because what you notice is what you create.
Mm.
So notice what you notice, because it would take a full-time observation to try to monitor your thoughts, but it is very easy for you to start noticing what you're noticing, because what you notice is what you create. So you come into the store, are you noticing a screaming baby, or are you noticing something on sale?
Mm.
Or you noticing how beautiful the light reflection in the window? What do you notice?
Mm.
Because what you notice is
Mm.
what you create. That's just a very important principle, because very often, if you don't have access to somebody who's trained to help you find a pattern of damaging thoughts, where do you start?
Mm.
You start with noticing what you notice. So if you constantly say, oh my gosh, my aunt drives me crazy,
Mm.
that's what you notice.
Mhm.
That's what you create, right?
Mhm.
So the first step is always awareness. Then we can talk about alignment. Then we can talk about action. But it all starts with awareness. So
Obviously, you hear a lot about gratitude, kind of on the same topic, right? Does gratitude have a big enforcement in that as well? Like what you're manifesting, does gratitude have a big role to play in this?
oh, absolutely. This is a shortcut to creating your life,
Mm.
because if you notice things, I say notice what you notice, also notice how you notice, because
Yeah.
it's one and the same.
Yeah.
Because you can notice a new car, and you can notice it with excitement that somebody has it, with gratitude that they've been blessed with it, or with
Mm.
jealousy that you weren't the one.
Right.
And how you notice is what you create. So the gratitude is a frequency of an emotion that allows for us to be tuned in to reality as if it's already ours. Because our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what is real in physical sense and what is imaginary in mental sense. It really doesn't. I want to do this experiment. It's a 15-second experiment for you and for your audience, is that I want you guys to just imagine, don't even close your eyes,
Mm.
but just imagine that you come to the fridge, you open the fridge, and you take out a lemon. Okay, you took out a lemon and you cut it in half, okay? And you squeezed the juice and you poured it in your mouth.
Mm.
Okay? How did that feel for you?
Yeah.
We know that we just went through those steps of lemon, and yet you kind of felt, because it doesn't know the difference. When we are noticing the world through gratitude, our powerful subconscious mind says, oh, this is what we are creating. So, but you can't fake it till you make it.
Mm.
With gratitude, you can't fake it till you make it. It's got to be genuine gratitude. It's
I
not,
see.
okay, let me write down, I'm grateful for this so that it happens. It's got to be heartfelt.
So that's almost like the figuring out the language, right? So it's a frequency, sort of tapping into the frequency of the world. That's sort of what you're talking about, right? If you're just sort of faking it, you're not really going into the right frequency. But if you're really feeling it, this is why when you are praying, when you are really praying, crying, that emotion maybe hits that frequency. Is that sort of what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, and just if you guys are looking into what frequency is, right? Because there's a lot of talk.
Right.
So that it's a very simple explanation to understand that, and I think it's important to understand that, because then it's easier to apply it.
Mm.
The basic universal law is energy is. That's the one law from which all the other universal laws come. The energy is. It can be neither created nor destroyed, but it is continually transformed, translated, and transmuted. It's the very basic laws of energy. And it is translated, transformed, and transmuted through the law of movement. So everything is constantly moving. If you guys think, you're sitting still, Sharif and I are sitting still, we're sitting still, there's zero, I can talk about stillness on a whole other topic. That's the movement. Stillness is the movement at a speed of thought of God. That's what stillness is. So when you move at the inspired thought of divine, it feels still, but it only feels still because you had an ultimate movement. So as things move, right, as the energy moves, it moves in a different pattern, and that pattern of movement is frequency. And each one of us is a unique expression of movement of pattern. Hence, we each are a frequency of energy. And we expand or shrink by tuning in to different, either higher or lower frequencies. So we don't, when I'm watching TV and I'm bored with a channel, I click and change to a new channel. All I've done is I changed the frequency. Yeah. It is as easy to apply it to your life as it is to your TV set.
Is there easier way to switch that frequency? If somebody is going through trauma, I remember a long time ago, I had a conversation with one of my best friends. It was probably in my early 30s when I'm still sort of learning paths. And those days when I was going through stuff, the go-to was going for a drink. So one day I was talking to her and she was like, okay, so what's your go-to move when you go through this kind of thing? I was like, I just go to a bar. And she was like, no, you got to figure out a healthy way to get to that, to change your mood. Right now with drinks, you are really just pausing yourself for a little bit. You're going to jump back into that again if you don't know a healthy way of dealing with those mental states. So I assume that's what you're saying, that there is a healthier way to change that frequency, change that thought process. Even if you're going through trauma, even if you are going through depression, there are ways that you can change your thought process or frequency. Is that correct?
Yeah. And, when we think, what I often tell people is that I can help them heal from trauma, but they will have to choose to let go of drama. You cannot heal somebody from drama. Yeah. Because what happens is trauma is when in a nutshell, trauma is when your free agency has been violated by somebody. That's it. That's what trauma is. You have not chosen the experience for you. And then the severity of that trauma can go on a scale of damage to your human psyche. But you are violated as a result of being robbed of your free agency. And then drama is choosing that free agency to believe that you're now a victim of that trauma. And you now are creating life from the aspect of being a victim. Now that's drama. So we have not chosen our trauma. We can talk about the soul and the learning. I'm talking about the conscious mind. The 7% of your brain did not choose to lose a child. It did not. And I know that when people say, oh, you chose it, your higher self chose it, you just want to suffocate those people. Because, so your conscious self has not chosen the trauma, but your same conscious self can choose to be a creator of a new healed life that knows how to release the trauma. And it is possible to heal from it. So that's just so huge. So when we see people stuck in a reliving their trauma, it's because they've chosen a drama cycle, and they've chosen
consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that 7% is conscious and 93% is subconscious. So if there's an easier way to get to your subconscious belief and change that thought process, right? That's obviously a turning point for anybody, right? Interesting stuff.
It is interesting stuff, and I've dedicated my life to it, really, going forward, and some of the things that we've done. And one of this just comes in now, so I'll share it as it comes in, is that the fastest way for any person to come out of either trauma or break the cycle of drama is simply reconnect and remember who they are.
How do you do that?
And the simplest way, the starting point, wherever you are in life, the starting point is an affirmation. And the reason why affirmations are so powerful is actually magnificent. You know, there is uh, there is in Hindu Torah and mentioned in Quran and in Christian Bible, there's this guy running around opening the Red Sea, Moses, you know. So the cool thing about Moses, prophet, you know, of the old times, who historically takes slaves, the Jewish slaves out of Egypt, historic fact, undeniable historic fact.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, his divine mission outside of all the others is to take people out of slavery. So for me, the possibility coach, I zoom in and I say, hey, I want to learn from this guy. He believes slavery is bad. Any form of slavery, other enslaving you, trauma, you enslaving you, drama. Same concept, different application. So why is he so near and dear to my heart? Is because when he experiences meeting God, that, you know, I call God the grand overall designer, however you define the grand overall designer, from Big Bang to Allah to creator to Heavenly Father, the grand overall designer, universe, right? God. When he meets God for the first time, he has a vision and apparition of the burning bush. And so when he talks to this burning bush and he receives the guidance, he says, well, what's your name? You know, what is your name? Who do I say sent me? Because you're telling me I need to go to these people who are enslaved and I need to tell them, I need to take you out of slavery. You need to follow me. I'm a nobody, follow me.
Right.
And one of the most poignant moments happens then, something that inspired me. And the reason I've created, you know, 2 apps that have affirmation is God says, I am that I am. Tell them I am has sent you. So I have chills as I say it. And I want you guys to understand that when you say I am, you're stating the divine focus to who you are. And what comes after I am either yanks you out of that divine focus or magnifies that connection. So when you say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, I'm broke, I'm so stupid, that's when we take God's name in vain.
Wow.
One of the commandments is do not take God's name in vain. And yes, there are different gorgeous interpretation of what that means, and we honor them all. But on a practical I amness level, you take God's name and you're created from the energy of all that is. So you are, I am. So the affirmation, if you have never done any energy work, you've never had a life coach, you start with notice what you notice. What are you affirming into your life? Are you affirming shambles or are you affirming power? Are you affirming poor me or are you affirming empowered me? Right. So what my company, what we've done is that we have 2 very basic but very empowering products. One is called I Happy Daily, and it is an affirmation that it's divided into a full year of affirmations based on weekly virtues. Virtue is the quality, the strength, the divine strength that you can apply in this life. So you start there. So, you know, right now, and I use the product because I love it. So right now it's the week of beauty. So every week there's an affirmation, I am beautiful, you know, I am aware, and so forth and so on. And then the second one that we're wrapping up for Android at this point is called I Happy Me. And I Happy Me is a higher frequency because it actually matches you with the message you are supposed to receive. And I'll just kind of leave it at that, because if you wanted to know more, you can obviously look it up. But even if you can't afford the $1.99 app, right? I don't know where you are. You can afford starting your day by writing down, I am whole. Start there. I'm whole. And you keep saying it until it gets you out of bed. Right? I'm whole.
Yeah.
I got this. I'm whole.
Yeah.
I'm whole. I'm whole. And then whatever your language would be, either I'm a spark of divine, I'm a child of God, you know, there's a part to me that's always been, if that is an easier thing, right? Wherever you are, you start remembering who you are. That's where you start.
It's amazing. When I won't say diagnose is probably not the most positive
Yeah,
word.
we're not practicing medicine without license.
When
We
you-
use we do energy scan. We do
right,
energy.
right. When you read your energy,
Yes.
when you start to sort of try to start to understand yourself, right? When you start to look at your life and things that has happened and all this stuff, a lot of times or most of the time it end up taking you to your childhood. And you know so how your childhood, your surrounding, how you have been treated, or the exposures you had as a child makes a huge impact in everybody's life. A lot of times when you're going to therapy session, you end up finding out that when you're 3 years old, something you have seen that has impacted you from all throughout your life, right? When I realized that, and I sort of thought about me having my daughter at such a young age, and I always tell my friends that I got lucky that she turned out well, because when you are so young, you yourself is trying to figure yourself out. And then how much could I really have taught her or do it well when I'm like 20 some years old and she's a little child. One of the things I've noticed with you is that you have an amazing, not just friendship, I don't know if friendship is the right word. Your daughter really respects you. There's a difference between kids loving their parents, kids respecting their parents, and kids looking up to their parents. She actually comes to you. She wants to learn from you. To me, that's a conscious teaching. Because you are aware, because you are conscious, you've been able to build this relationship. I've always been curious about how you sort of like started that path, started that journey, because everybody who has kids, we all know it's not easy. There's no manual, right? There's no book. But any tips that you have, that would be great.
I do have a few tips, and I do have a personal theory that I stand by. So that I think for a lot of parents will be like a gulp of fresh air, I
Yeah.
believe. And so I'll start with that, and then I'll kind of go into a few tips related to that. So what I've come to understand, and I've done a lot of family, both healing and counseling and consulting. What I've come to understand, unavoidably so, is that parents don't have children to grow them. Parents have children for children to grow them. And if you think of the divine intelligence that has created everything in the most immaculate, profound sense, do you really believe that if any human being could ruin the path of advancement and of enlightenment of another spirit, that divine intelligence would entrust you that spirit? So any child that comes to any parent is a higher frequency spirit that has come as that parent's opportunity to grow in the fastest way possible. And so the sooner you as a parent realize that your child has come to teach you, and the sooner you start learning from your child, the closer and more profound your relationship will become. Because the kids don't do what we tell them to do. They only do what we do. And so here's tip number one. When you mess up, own up. You're going to mess up. If you're not messing up, you are not an involved parent. You just don't care. Right. You have really good babysitters, and maybe that works. That's fine. Right. But if you are a parent, you're going to mess up. Mess up is not plan B. It is the plan. Right. It is the plan. We've come to mess up. Yeah. So, Jan Gottlieb says, your mess is your message. I love that. So how do you develop your message if you haven't messed up? So we get to mess up. But the ownership of a mess up is what teaches your child to own it. So I hear parents all the time say, well, say you're sorry, say you're sorry, say you're sorry. You cannot teach a kid to say I'm sorry and mean it. And by the way, going forward, I hope you won't be saying I am sorry. It's a very devastating affirmation. When you say I am sorry, you're affirming that you're a sorry thing of a being. And quite frankly, if you've ever been in an argument with somebody and they say, how could you do it? And you say, well, I'm sorry. What comes after that? Oh, really? You're sorry? Right? Have you guys experienced that? So what do you say? When you mess up in a relationship, whether it's kid, which is your equal, high frequency, or your significant other, you're equal, in terms of energy, you say, forgive me.
I see.
You want, because that makes you own what you've done without excusing yourself as a character who is a pitiful, sorry being. It's a powerful thing, right? So when you mess up with your kids, as you will, and I hope you do a lot of it because you show them that they can be forgiven for anything and you free them to mess up. You get to say, there was a better way to do this, forgive me. If you haven't done this before and your kid is now 17, it's never too late to start. Or 40. Sure. Whether your kid is 3, 17, or 40, it's never too late to say, forgive me. Watch the reaction when you tell your kid, forgive me, meaning it. It is the closest frequency that can be created. And then you're teaching them to say, forgive me going forward. Forgiveness is the foundation of parenting.
That's beautiful.
And then if you want to do another thing that I've done, homeschooling tip number 2, that's very, very huge. We learn by teaching. The reason I love to teach so much is because I have a lot to learn. So we learn by teaching, so do our children. So when the kids were young and I was actually doing actual school, I would assign the topic and they'd have to do research and present it to me, because by teaching me, they were learning. So in any relationship, if you want your kid to learn something, ask them a question. Don't lecture, ask them. If you want them to know how to be kind, don't tell them be kind. Ask them, what are 3 ways in which you are being kind? Do you know 3 ways of being kind?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the 2 very big tips.
Interesting. And I think, the fact that you're saying that when you start to think about your life and their life is a parallel life, you're not owner of that life. Just because you gave birth doesn't mean you are fully responsible for it or you control that. Once you take out that control and dependency, I think that's where the unconditional love kind of comes in. Otherwise, as a parent, we're constantly thinking, well, if you fail, that makes me look like a failure. Or, when I'm old, you're going to take care of me. That expectation and dependency is what kind of, I think, messes up this whole dynamics, right?
The attachment to result, absolutely. Yeah. And you know what I love, Sharif, you'll get a good laugh out of it, because, we always say that a parent's love comes as close to unconditional love that there is, right? Yeah. But I say it's the most conditional love there is. It's conditional that it's your kid. The condition of that love is it's your kid. It's conditioned.
Got a sense of humor.
I just love that. It's like, so what unconditional love really becomes is loving yourself as you think you're messing your kid up. That's where kids are teaching unconditional love.
Oh, wow.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I know.
If you can forgive yourself for anything you think you're doing to mess up your kid, you are learning unconditional love for you. That's it. Because your kid's love is always going to be conditioned on the fact that they're your kid and you'll go die for them.
Then, since we're talking about love, right? The fact that we spend so much time looking for love, right? How many times do you hear from people that, oh my God, I'm not married, or I don't have kids, or, he doesn't love me, she doesn't love me, or I want to find somebody who completes me. The whole society is fascinated by trying to find that one person that's supposed to complete you. Without that, if you are single, if you don't have kids, it's like you lack something. Every time I have someone I talk to who I know that is knowledgeable, has interesting, can have different interesting conversations, I always ask that, like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, why can I not be full of love myself? Why do I have to have somebody or someone um, to feel loved? Is that society kind of created, or is it genetics? Is it biological thing, or is it a combination? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a disconnect from the universal source of love. The further we get away from understanding that God is love,
Mm,
the more we look for a substitute, the more we have to create the power of love. I define love as life originating, free, vibrant emotion. And then emotion comes from Latin word emovere, which is energy in motion.
mm,
So love for me is life originating, vibrant energy in motion.
mm,
Anytime you reaffirm life, you love. Anytime you take away from life or quality of life, you don't love. That's my personal definition. And we've all come from the source of love, because the love is the energy through which everything is created and is continually expressing itself. And it goes back to remembering who we are. So if you remember, the very first affirmation I suggested was I'm whole.
mhm,
And when you say I am whole, you follow up with I am love, because you are life originating, vibrant emotion. This very moment, life is being originated through you. Billions of cells are dividing. Little microorganisms, not to freak you out, happy bacteria, trillion of those cells are having a party. You are bursting with life. You are bursting with life.
mm,
And that life that is bursting within you is inviting you to be aware of it. And when you're aware of the miracle of life, your heart is filled with love and you're in the presence of God. So,
every time I talk to you, I'm like, tell me more. I could listen to you all day long. This is why I was telling you before we started to chat. Like, I'll go a few months, and it was like, I need a class with you. I need the dose
oh,
because
it's,
it
it's love.
increases my frequency. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
love
yeah,
because you feel love,
yeah,
because you feel love, because my love for you is genuine, not because you complete me or I complete you,
yeah.
but because when you're connected to the source of love within, and I always say, what is peace?
Mm,
And peace is simply continued awareness of that love.
mm,
That's it. You're either feeling love of God for you and through you or not.
mm,
If you're feeling it, you're energetic, you're vibrant, you're full of life,
mm,
you're full of love. If you're not, you're fearful. And if you're fearful, you want to grasp somebody else's source of life. And that's when you say, I need somebody else to complete me.
I
You're
see.
still seeking out love.
Mm,
You just forgot that the love was within you all along.
mm,
So there are two ways to form a relationship. I'm suffocating. Let me hook into your love for survival.
mm,
And or I am connected and full of love and I'm expending it. And when my expended love finds, if it is meant to somebody else's,
mm.
then we expend the wholeness that we are. Talking of romantic relationship.
Sure.
But you start with that, and so peace is then just the awareness of that love.
Mm,
And so then what is joy, what is happiness, is the application of that peaceful love.
mm.
That kind of breaks down the basic
The basic
emotions.
emotions, and then obviously love, happiness, peace. We all seek, but at the end of the day, we all have to go. What does death means to you?
I I'm writing a book right now. It's my chronologically fourth book. But in a way, it's the only book that I've been writing, I think, for centuries.
Wow.
And that book, the book's going to be called F Off Marble, I'm Free, Living a Life of Limitless Possibilities. And in that book, on the chapter of the Heart Center, it's possible to be loved as you are, since we're speaking of love and you're so guided, and you ask about death related to that, just amazes, gives me chills to think about that. I answer it in one word: death is shit. Death serves one purpose. It serves one purpose: to give us an opportunity to connect to the meaning of life. It just was the simplest way to give an invitation to us to connect the meaning of life and to choose love over fear. And as human species, as humanity evolves and shifts its frequency, at some point, death will no longer serve its purpose. And until that point, until the point where we appreciate every moment of life through presence of love, we'll be walking through the shit of death. That's just what's gonna be. So you can romanticize it and say it's just another door into other reality, which it is. But it is what it is.
It's a wake up call.
It's a wake up call. It's a wake up call. It's a loud one. It's hard to miss that one.
Interesting. So then, if that's the case, so then what is the purpose of life? Like everybody tries to define life, right? Everybody talks about, every religion has its own definition. Some religion believe one life. Some religion believes in karma. And a lot of times when we hear karma, we think karma is a negative thing, right? So, and then in Muslim religion, it talks about only one life, then you go to heaven or hell. In Hindu religion, it talks about 7 lives. So to you, what does the meaning of life means to you? What is the purpose? Do we all come with a purpose? There's a mission that we are learning. Like what does that mean to you? If death is shit.
It is. I mean, if you've experienced it, you know it is. So to me, connecting back the relationship between life and love is the highest frequency. The purpose of life, the full awareness and creation of the world through the energy of love. We have come to master the ability to create reality, not only spiritually, but also physically. Speaking in a spiritual language and coinciding with the quantum language, our body is our first dominion. What does it mean? So there's this eternal essence of who you are. Whether you think of it as spirit, whether you think of it as just the energy that's always been, we know it can never be destroyed. I like to choose the word spirit. You choose your own word. So as that essence of who you are has always been, it enters your body. It hits the first set of every possible creative molecule that the known universe has to offer. And it has to learn how to work through it. And it learns either to work through resistance, resentment, disease, strife, decay, or through flow, through peace, through love, and through wellness. This is our first immediate dominion. We're given this phenomenal gift of the body to learn how to rule the elements. And what we learn is that you can only work with the elements through nothing but unconditional love. We're given the body to learn to love our body and to learn to love our spirit within the body. As we do, that miracle of love expands, and we can literally move mountains, as Christ said. That's not amazing. Figuratively, but literally. This is what has him walk on water. And that's what we all have within us as a potential.
the belief meeting the frequency, basically, right?
I love just the understanding. So we're here to understand love.
That's
And
amazing.
we're shifting now. There's a lot of, I almost write about this in the book, actually, and it's fresh in my mind. There's this book by James Allen, As a Man Thinketh.
Mm.
And the book, As a Man Thinketh, really the premise is thoughts create things. But it's a misnomer because he actually takes that from the proverb of Solomon. Solomon was the richest man and the king of Judea, who was the wisest man and the richest man of his time. The actual teaching is, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So we've gone through about 80 to 100 years of personal development gurus talking about the power of your mind.
Yeah.
And we're slowly descending to finish that statement, the power of your heart. And by the way, the science now, it's fascinating to me. The science now has discovered the thinking neurons, 40,000 neurons in your heart. And it has discovered that there are more synapses of control going from your heart to your mind, to your brain, than from your brain to your heart.
Oh, wow.
So your heart is the driving force of your creation. And we are just slowly, in a very unpopular, scary move,
science is catching
moving
up.
away from science says. Yes, because if you want to be smart, all you have to say is the scientists have said.
Right,
and all of a sudden we're saying, what did my heart tell me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I guess that's why they say when your mind and heart, your heart and your brain are balanced, when it's working together, that's when you are in the right path, right?
Absolutely.
So your book, Vika, you started to end this with. I want to hear more about the book. So obviously it's all about possibility, but is this chapter based? You're talking about specific topics, or is it also including different techniques? You mentioned about EFT, different techniques that you use. Is it more going to be helpful for personal help, because you do help with sort of changing personal belief system? You also help with relationship. You also do business coaching. So is it a combination of all of those?
Well, the book actually, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, is it a combination? So I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, so the book is meant to be an answer to any person on any topic, to take them from where they believe they're stuck in impossibility to make it possible. So the book can be applied in an individual freeing manner. The book itself has been working its way through. I have this, and Sharif, you're a part of this incredible family. I have this incredible subscription family that is called Quantum Freedom.
Yeah.
The whole story of creating that was completely guided, down to in December 2019, I'm told you need to take your teachings online now, launched January 24th. I'm like, okay, no problem, I'm going online. And then of course COVID hits. And by the time COVID hits, I've transitioned all my training online with that program. And in that program, the very first subdivision or guide or topic that we've done for 7 months was opening the energy centers. The energy centers, they're also called chakras and so forth and so on. It's just aligning your energy flow. And what I was guided to do was to do it in a very non-traditional way. Originally, you're guided to open the flow through your body of energy, either going from the top, people call it crown chakra, all the way down, or from the bottom, referred to as root chakra, and going up. But what I was shown is that a person who goes from the bottom is stuck on the materialistic and might never go up. And a person who's starting up on top can get so detached from the world.
And
yes, and they're on cloud nine. They're just floating there. Denial and enlightenment, not the same thing, people. I know.
Yeah.
So it was really empowering for me to start with a heart center. And so as we start with the heart center, it is the center of love. And then we go down to the solar plex, which is light. And I don't care what your background is, whether it's spiritual or religious, we all agree on one thing. God is love, God is light.
Mhm.
You know, universe is love, universe is light.
Mm.
So by opening these two first centers, you open the possibility of creation through love and light. You
Oh,
open the
beautiful.
divine flow inside you.
Mm.
And then I do a special meditation in the book, you know, of opening that flow. And if you look at my hand, I'm doing this number 8, but it's an eternal helix. Our DNA is created an eternal helix, but it's an eternal helix of love and light.
Infinity.
And then it goes up to be able to speak through love and light, to create through love and light, to see the world, and so forth. And so I call them possibility centers to avoid spooking somebody who's never dealt with energy or metaphysics or quantum physics, who just says, you know, I don't know where to go. I have no money. So they probably need to start with there's a chapter that's called the proper ass etiquette. You know, the proper ass etiquette. That is, I'm referring to the root chakra in an energy talk, but it's just all about connecting. It's the center for connection. So wherever a person is, it simply frees them to first remember who they are, and then to create fully from the place that they are the life that they want. I love
Amazing.
writing this
I
book.
I
I just finished
cannot
my second
wait.
chapter.
I cannot wait till your book comes out. You know, I think out of the books that I've read so far, I keep going back to that Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. That one book that I really
Yes.
like, because it talks about so many important things. So it talks about emotion, talks about intentions. I really have a feeling that your book is going to be one of those for me too, that I will probably keep going back to. Yeah, I've seen you for years. I'm just really excited. That book is going to be big. It's going to impact a lot of people. So you have to give me a word when your book comes out.
I think
Yep,
we're ready. We're ready to step out of slavery.
I think so.
I will. I
Yeah,
will. I
yeah,
hope to get back on with you when the book
yes,
comes out to celebrate, to launch
yes.
it.